My name is Gina, and I'm a planner at Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission, and we serve 30 towns in East Central Vermont. So this is really geared towards newer planning commissioners, but this is also for anyone who would like to learn more about the local planning world in Vermont and to brush up on any planning related topic. And before we start, just make sure that you're muted. And there are a couple of functions in Zoom, such as raising your hand. While I'd like for everyone to wait on your comments and questions until the end of the presentation, if it's urgent, feel free to wave your hands around or put that Zoom function hand wave for me to see. Brian, another planner at Two Rivers, he's going to help facilitate kind of like the Zoom functions as well as go over the capital budgeting program.
hmm
Um, so, all right. This is kind of the breakdown for my presentation tonight. So we got the planning basics. We're just going to cover the history as well as why we plan. We got the roles and responsibilities, such as your duties and all the limitations of being a planning commissioner. And here we're going to talk about the town plans, bylaws, and capital budgeting. Implementation is going to be pretty short, but it's going to be an overview of where the Planning Commission falls in kind of like the local planning networking, or just like the realm. And lastly, kind of like the nitty-gritty side of the meetings and hearings and just due process. So first, planning is a process that guides the current and future development of land. It impacts every aspect of our community and our future. So planning we do every day, even writing ingredients down for when you go to the supermarket, we're actively planning for the future. So we're just doing this at a town level. Our future is definitely changeable, and we have the legal power to maintain or change the trajectory of our future. And so the reason that we plan is that communities want to achieve the beneficial outcomes of land use and development, and it is to ensure that our quality of life is maintained and improved. We have a shared vision for where we want our community to go, and it's to encourage economic development and to gain certainty about some of the natural hazards that we will face in the future. Um, so to your left, the image is a photo that I pulled from the web. This is from the July 2023 flooding. I think this might be Bridgewater, but it's quite shocking. Um, and as planning commissioners, you also have the power to control strip development and to protect forest blocks because once you take away forest blocks, it's nearly impossible to get them back. So here I will be talking about the history of planning and regulation. So just to put into context, planning has been around for ages, and us planners are just part of this history that's continuously moving and changing. So 1921, we have the Vermont legislature first authorizing municipalities to create planning commissioners and to draft municipal plans. 1931 is where we have zoning regulations be authorized, such as zoning maps and bylaws, but there's still that missing link between zoning and actual like town planning. Uh, and then 1968 is quite important because that's the birth of Act 24, Chapter 117, which the main purpose is to, revise the previous laws about zoning and land statutes. So this is where the regional planning commissions are created. Right now there are 11, and also the regional planning documents. You also have the creation of town planning commissions and town plans. Keep in mind, it's also optional, but Two Rivers highly encourages everyone to get one. Um, and also zoning subdivision and bylaw administration and enforcement. 1970, we have Act 250. I think everyone here has heard of it. It also goes by the name the State Land Use Act. Um, So around this time, as you may already know, lots of things are happening in Vermont, especially with I-89 and 91 being completed, just tourism increasing and companies moving in. And so Act 250 is important because this is a giant step towards land regulation from state down. And this is also where we have the 10 criteria. Um, this is where, when projects come in, they need to conform to not just local rules, but also the regional and state plans. In summary, the criteria really talks about whether the development will have impact on the environment, such as water supplies, traffic, and water quality, as well as some of our social aspects like traffic and local schools and services, municipal costs, and kind of the historical and aesthetic beauty of the town. Oof. Also, please feel free to go to our website. We have all the information there. It might be like information overload right now, but yeah, it's just covering the basics. 1972 is where we have the creation of Section 248 of Title 30. This is just regulating like utility facilities where they can be placed. And for a facility to be placed, such as electric or gas pipeline companies, they must obtain a certificate of public good from the Public Utility Commission before they prepare or construct within any place in Vermont. So the 10 criteria from Act 250 is very important during this process. And then the last two, being 1988 and 2004, are just really amendments to Chapter 117 in terms of updating maybe the zoning enforcement and making a stronger connection between the Regional Planning Commission and the Town Planning Commission. So getting into the roles and responsibilities. Also, please let me know if I'm talking too fast or too slow. I can always speed things up or slow down. Also, looking at the timeline, we can tell just planning is not perfect, and we're still moving towards a process where it's just suiting our current needs as well as our future needs. Okay, going into the powers and duties. So congratulations on everyone being planning commissioners, even regional planning commissioners. People in your town believe in you and you adhere to some of great values such as listening and taking turns and being great facilitators. And so with that comes responsibilities. And so the purpose of a planning commission is to draft town plans and bylaws, and also to implement special studies like bike route feasibility programs. So the powers are listed in Title 24, Section 4325. And some of the duties are to create, maintain, and update the town plan, and as well as to make amendments to zoning and bylaws. Also to be in charge of like the zoning map and any text amendments that come with it, and any special land use development review and site plan approval, as well as reviewing some of the planning and engineering projects, such as when you have a town garage that's falling apart, you will look over where it's going to be sited. This is the planning process, which is further detailed in section 4302 to 4381 and 4387. These are a lot of numbers. When I first look at them, they were just numbers to me, but they're all explained in either our website, or if you happen to have this very thick book, we call it the Green Book. They're quite heavy, but they're very useful. So I highly recommend for anyone to, if they have any questions, to read the book. Even just, even sections are very helpful. But this is the planning process flow that I created, which I've also taken from different sources from the web. But it is quite a comprehensive process. And it requires a lot of coordination among not just planners, but as you can see with the residents and with other municipal bodies and also your neighboring towns. Whew. Um, this is the town plan adoption and RPC approval. Um, as I've mentioned, the town plan is kind of the baby. It's the community's vision for where they want to go. Um, so in your town plan, if you well, for town plans, you can have mandatory language such as prohibit, which would add teeth to your recommendations, but also should encourage and consider are also set directions that are also okay. Um, the plans also expire every 8 years, and they sometimes approach quite rapidly, so please plan ahead. Because it could be that the Planning Commission meets once or twice a month, and there are also some regulations set for when you have a meeting or a hearing for it to be adopted. Um, when it's adopted, you have zoning, subdivision, and flood regulations in place, as well as Act 250 applications that must conform to the town plan. The Certificate of Public Good applications is usually administered by the Public Utility Commission. This is also going back to Act 174 as well about how a utility facility will impact the environment. And you will also be eligible for competitive grant applications. And to get an RPC's approval, which is different from adoption, you have all the required elements from the state's planning goals, my bad, and also it's compatible with the regional plan. And so you have many perks of having a town plan that's been approved by the regional commission. So let me just pause for a second. Does anyone have any questions about what I've said so far? Okay. Sweet. So number one, you're eligible for the municipal planning grant. This grant really helps with funding planning projects, such as collecting data or doing research, updating town plans, bylaws, and other special projects. Number two would be Village and Downtown Program. This is a tax credit program, so it's offering financial incentives to businesses to be in those designated areas. So it helps with development. Number three would be state agencies programs. And so one of the requirements for CDBG, also known as Community Development Block Grants, is that the town plan must have regional plan approval. Number four, it would be smoother Act 250 permitting process. If you've already been approved by the regional plan, then you're already in good standing for Act 250. And then number five would be the enhanced energy planning determination, which is Act 174. Harry from our office is the lead on this. So under Act 174, this is about citing energy projects. This is kind of the guidelines that the town plan must have for a substantial deference in Section 248, Certificate of Public Good process. So if you have any questions about that, you can either ask Harry or go to one of our websites, which has all the details. Okay. So the town plan has many requirements, and I think everyone's they're aware of this because the chapters in the town plans are pretty much the outlines. And so if you want to know about it, you can go to section 4382. But then there's more. The state also has planning goals that the town plan must also adhere to. And now we talk about zoning and how to adopt zoning. So as you may already know, zoning is pretty much regulating activities on each parcel of land. It must be consistent with future land use map. And at Two Rivers, we help with drafting bylaws with the Planning Commission. And the draft goes through a hearing for the Planning Commission and the Select Board level. And it can either be voted by the town or be adopted by the Select Board. And with the bylaw adoption process, you can either have imminent hearing, so this is preparing a report, and this is all going through section 4411. And then, so there's just a lot of paperwork when it goes through an adoption process. So it is effective. So when the zoning and bylaw document is adopted by the select board, it is effective 21 days after. And bylaws must be adopted within 1 year of the Planning Commission's final hearing. Otherwise, it's rejected. So when the select board warns of the first hearing for the bylaw, for the draft bylaw, it goes into combined effect with the current bylaw, which is for 150 days. So now I'm going to hand it off to Brian to talk more about capital budgeting.
All right, can you hear me? Oh, good. All right, so before I get into to capital budgeting, I want to just ask the planning commissioners from Bethel, do you know if Bethel has a capital budget? Anyone?
If they do, I can't find it.
Okay, so maybe they don't have one.
No,
They
I'm,
should.
yeah, we do.
It might
Oh,
be
you
on the
do?
website. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I looked around our computer real quick to see if I could find one, but I didn't.
Yeah, I couldn't find it when I looked on their website, but
Okay. All right, so then I hope this will be pretty useful. So to start off with capital budgets, one of the first things you want to do is go to the utilities and facilities chapter of your town plan. In there, you're going to see an inventory of buildings, utilities, services, and vehicles. And from here, this is really useful information when you're going to start to develop a capital budget, which is one of the responsibilities you may take on as being a member of a planning commission. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so a capital budget, if you look in the state statutes, it describes it as a list of capital projects that will be undertaken the next year with their estimated cost, and also identifying the proposed method of financing those projects. The capital program is the same idea, but it's over a timeline of the next 5 years. So if you create a capital budget, it'll have to be 5 years per state statutes. However, we at Two Rivers, we recommend planning out the capital budget for the next 10 years. So that is also something to consider. We would recommend you do that if you get started on a capital budget. But very similarly, it's just the same information. It's the plan of capital projects, which will be undertaken within 5 years, figuring out an estimated cost for that project, and then identifying a proposed method of financing. Of course, with capital planning, there's going to be a lot of gray area and you're not going to have perfect information. So rough estimates are fine. You won't have the ability to know exactly in 5 years what something might cost, but you could know what it costs now and sort of plan for it to be a little bit more or maybe a little bit less, depending on what the project is. So here's a little bit more about capital budgets. According to the state statutes, it's any one of the following. It's a physical betterment or improvement. It's a furnishing machinery or equipment for that physical betterment when it's first constructed or acquired. That's a very important part. It's first constructed or acquired. Routine maintenance on buildings, on vehicles, on your roadways, like patching, aren't going to count as capital projects. It's really just those projects when they're first constructed or acquired. However, in the state statutes, you'll see they also include preliminary studies and surveys that go into go into those projects. If you are going to create a new egress onto a roadway and that requires a survey, that survey is an item in the capital budget in addition to that work to create a new egress onto your road. This, according to the statutes, also this capital project could also be land or rights in land, so like easements, if you need to acquire that for a town purpose. So real property acquisitions, if you're going to move a town garage and you need to buy land, that would also be included as a capital project. And lastly, any combination of these three can be made up into the capital budget. All right, and so here's a little bit more detailed list of examples of what kind of capital projects might be undertaken by your town. Of course, it's very specific to your town, what they currently have in their utilities and facilities chapter, and what the needs of these departments are, and what the select board is interested in. And so this can become a bit political, but that's all right. And so the first kind of common capital budget, oh, sorry, you skipped a long way ahead. That's okay. Are vehicles and equipment for your highway department, your police department, your fire department, depending on what your town has. This could include like the grader for your highway department, or police cruisers, or the plow, or the chloride spreader for your plow. Those could all be capital projects if you're purchasing a new one or you're replacing your old one. Large roadway projects are also a thing you could have in your capital project or your capital budget, especially if it's a significant cost to the town to do so. But routine patching, maintenance of a road wouldn't count. Sidewalks, bridges, large culverts, and drains also pretty common things that towns undertake. These could be capital projects. Any sort of improvement, like you're replacing if you have a water or sewer system and you're replacing the lines, that would be a capital project. And again, we said land acquisition surveys and studies relating to ongoing projects or planned projects would be included here. And the last sort of category is improvements to your town buildings or facilities. So depending on if your town has a town hall, a town office, meeting house, whichever, improvements to there, sort of like large improvements, again, not small ones like you're going to patch the wall. Large improvements like you need a new roof would be included as a capital project, or maybe you're going to get a generator or a heat pump. You can consider those capital projects. And the same holds true for other sorts of facilities within your town, like libraries or schools, recreation facilities, cemeteries, shelters, any healthcare facilities you might have, and then also inside of your fire department, your fire station, your police station or town garage, any sort of improvement there. Maybe you're expanding operations, adding another bay to your town garage. That would be considered a capital project. All right, so a little bit more from the statute. So the capital budget and program needs to list the projects themselves by the order of priority, and also to give some description about the project that is going to be undertaken. When we create a capital budget, we work with the town, we create a report that goes with it, and then that report, that's where we really have a description of the capital project. And of course, there list out the estimated cost and identify the methods of financing. There's a few different methods in the statutes you can use. This could be a direct budgetary appropriation. It could come out of a reserve fund if you have one. It could come from bonds or loans from the state or federal government, maybe from an impact fee if it's a subdivision or a new development, or from the issuance of obligations such as bonds. So talk a little bit more about these methods of financing. So obviously any direct budgetary appropriation, that's going to come out of your town's general fund or maybe the highway fund, depending on what the project is. Reserve funds are a little different. So reserve funds have to be duly warned at an annual or special meeting. They are a separate account that your town will maintain. It's separate from the town general fund or the highway fund. And by statute, it has to be established for a specific purpose. That specific purpose can be a little broad. It could be for the purchase of any vehicles for use by the town, or it could be more specific. It could be vehicle just for the fire department has its own reserve fund, and then there might be one just for the highway department for their vehicles. It just depends on what the specific purpose is as defined by the town. And routinely, if the town is going to use a reserve fund to buy something, they don't need to put it to a vote of the town. The select board can decide to expend it as long as it is for that established purpose. However, if you're going to take money out of a reserve fund and use it for a purpose that it's not designated for, you will need to put that to a vote of the town at a annual or special meeting, duly warned. Yep. And then lastly, there's two other real common ways for financing capital projects. It might come from a loan or a grant from the federal or state government. And if it's a large project, maybe like a bridge, you might issue a bond. That's another thing towns will do. So in my short time here at Two Rivers, I've worked on a capital budget for Stockbridge. You can see here in the red highlighted box, these are the specifically highway vehicle purchases that the town is going to make. So these are one type of capital project that they're taking on. And these funds are all going to come out of their highway vehicle reserve fund. They have a reserve fund that's established just for the purchase of highway vehicles. So all the funding for them are going to come from that, none from impact fees or grants or bonds or loans. Well, they're going to take out some vehicle loans, but it's going to come out of the reserve fund. And you can see, because it's a reserve fund too, we can track the inflows, the expected yearly inflows and outflows from the reserve fund. So reserve funds are a pretty useful tool for capital budget projects, especially for like vehicles, which are routinely replaced and on a sort of set schedule. This could be something that your town will benefit from. And you can see for each year, we've also given the expected cost of this purchase. As they're financing most of their vehicles, the costs are spread out over several years. And here's just a section about this in the town, in the report that we wrote for them. So again, here we give them a bigger description of the project. We identify what it's going to be, and also reiterate that same information that's in the budget.
Sam, if I may, Sam, you said Bethel did not have one. I was referring, I know, to the fire department's capital budget plan that's in the town report, and I believe, and I'm looking for it now, that Bethel's capital budget, but if I find it, I'll let you know.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I saw something, but it's very outdated. But I have questions on that anyway, so
Sure.
we can circle back.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to help if I can. And so lastly, your role on the Planning Commission in regards to capital budgets. So you would work with the select board or the town manager to consolidate budgets. You're going to need to know information from any reserve funds, the regular budget as well, the town, or I should say the general fund and the highway fund. Discuss the needs of the town with representatives from the town departments, and then work with them to write a draft and then deliver it over to the select board for their consideration. So that's really the role of the Planning Commission in this.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian, for the overview of capital budgeting.
Oh,
now
Sam
we'll
does
move.
have a question.
I
Oh.
do. I'm sorry, I couldn't find my reaction. I couldn't find it. Anyway, yeah, what if we're not asked to participate in the effort?
Yeah, that might not happen. You can certainly, though, work with anyone who's interested in it. You're enabled to do so. You're not required to create a capital budget.
Yeah, but yeah, and I've just made a note that I don't think we've been asked
No.
and it would be appropriate, I think, for us to raise the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't find the raise my hand button either, but so I'll just raise my hand. Harry, this is all so contingent, and I mean, it's dynamic in terms of requirements that come up suddenly. You know, there's
Sure.
equipment breaks down, things burn down. And this is a 5-year horizon, right? Typically, yeah. So in that case, this should be reviewed, what, annually or as needed? In other words, if there's some sort of exigency that demands adjustment, more funds are gonna be expended. How does the planning commission play a role in that process if there's something that comes up suddenly?
Yeah, so the planning commission, depending on how involved they are with the capital budget after it's produced, you could definitely work with the select board to update it. You win a grant you didn't expect it to win. That's useful. Note that priorities have shifted. Now we're going to push back one project a couple of years and move one up a couple of years. So I mean, I think it's up to the town to establish their own schedule for updating it. And if it's every year or even less than that, that's great. But I think it's really up to you as a planning commission.
Thanks.
Yeah, those are some great questions. I'd say if we could, I will be like pretty quick with the rest of the slides so that we have more time for discussions. But so we will be talking about the implementation. So these are kind of the tools that we have as planning commissioners to implement our bylaws and our town plans. So this is to put kind of our functions in context, this is the web of decision making. The legislative is, the select board and the planning commission kind of below there. The administrative is pretty much the enforcer of ordinances, like the zoning administrator or the administrative officer. I think most towns have a development review board. Does Bethel have a development review board?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Because the other way would be the zoning board of adjustment and planning commission combined. The process to adoption. I think many of you may be aware, but the planning commission would go through a discussion and review of the said document, and then there would be a public hearing, and the recommendations would be given to the select board, which would also go through kind of the same process of discussion and review and possible public hearing. And if it's denied, it goes back to the planning commission for revisions, but if it's approved, then it is adopted. And then the last section is the meetings, hearings, and due process. So getting right into it, a typical agenda would include the following, such as a call to order and approval of the previous meeting's minutes. And so I think people are already aware of what's already in a agenda, so I'll go straight into the open meeting law. So what is it, the open meeting law? It's to ensure that any business discussion is open to the public at all times. This is to make sure that decision-making is transparent and people are involved in decision-making process. So the definition of public body is the planning commission, commissions, committees, auditors, listeners, any group that's officially recognized as serving the government. And a meeting is also defined as a gathering of quorum of commission for purposes of discussing business of the public body and taking action. There are some exceptions to it, but I can also talk about it later. So in order for you to meet the open meeting law, you must have advanced notices and share meeting agenda with the public. You should also make it so that everyone can join, and you should only discuss business or like mostly business, and maybe like small chats are fine, and have the meeting minutes ready within 5 days. Let's see. So emails. So communicating via email on commission matters could be in violation of open meeting law. So anything deliberating on business can happen in an email. It's just best practice to do it in a setting where everyone has access to it, including the public. And so when you want it to be open to the public, you should, either have like a Zoom link or a phone number just ready for people to join in. And public notice. There's some strict guidance for the following 3 types of meetings. So first would be the regular meeting, which is set by ordinance or resolution. You have to give at least 48 hours of notice, and you must post it at a town and 2 other places, as well as a website. The other 2 are special meetings and emergency meetings. Special meetings, 24 hours notice, and quite similar to the regular meetings. Emergency meetings are when the notice is given without extended warning. So you post it as soon as possible, and you post it in like the same areas as a regular meeting. Let's see. And for the public notice, you have either the legislative or quasi-judicial. As you can read on the slide here, these are pretty much the regulations around it. With the 15 days notice for both plans and bylaw changes in the legislative and for development review for quasi-judicial. I think the difference is just, so certified mailings is, you can email as well. It doesn't have to be a physical slug mail. And for the quasi-judicial hearing, you have to post it within the view of the nearest public right-of-way. And also have it be emailed to applicants and abutters. So legislative hearings are for the adoption of plans and ordinances and passing budgets. And then the quasi-judicial hearings are for like variances, subdivision plans, and any violations with zoning. So getting to public hearings, before the hearing, make sure that everyone has been properly warned that there is a hearing. And so when you have the documents, have it so that there are numbers on them because it would help people refer back to it, as well as like a summary for what you're going to talk about. And possibly have a town facilitator just in case the meeting could get contentious. And beginning in the hearing, you thank everyone for coming and explain that no vote will be taken because the purpose of the public hearing is to hear. During the meeting, you open up the floor and ask people their suggestions or like their names, and also to, if they have suggestions, to note which page number that is on. If someone hates what you have done, thank them. See if they hate particular parts, then thank them. If someone has a comment that's not germane, also thank them and be direct and speak with the draft itself. If there's a question and you don't know the answer, say you don't know and find out and get back to them. And when it's all done, thank everybody for coming and remind them of the next steps that you have. And after the hearing, the body can close the hearing and open a meeting to discuss any changes and take action. But if it's late in the day, then that could wait for another day. I think that rhymed. So conflict of interest. As planning commissioners, there might be ethical conundrums. So what should you do in those times? If you happen to know someone in the commission that's not impartial and they would personally benefit from the vote, such as having financial or personal interest or just knowing someone personally, then you can address this conflict of interest by knowing already the procedure of and ethics surrounding this. Like as a planning commission, you should know that you should conduct yourself as ethically as possible in meetings. And you should also let everyone know that you have personal ties to this. And it's best that you recuse yourself. So, and if you're in a virtual meeting, probably leave the meeting. And if you're in a physical location, then you must be in a different room. And there are also alternates placed in place of you. And we have two different types of making decisions. We have the voting, where the majority determines the decision. And the pros of this is that it is efficient, but it is also not the most equal because there are clear winners and losers, and the minority voice isn't included and may not encourage full group discussions. And consensus, on the other hand, is taking on every perspective, and everyone is supporting the ultimate decision, even though it's not everyone's favorite. But it is helpful for guiding discussions and to get rid of ambiguity, because maybe someone might object because they don't understand. But consensus, I think, would help clear it up. But it is quite slow process, and especially for a large group, could take even longer. So you can use, a fist to 5, where each digit of your finger, or how many fingers you have, like pointing up, would show whether you have a suggestion, a comment, or a concern. And colored cards, like if you were to play soccer. But it's also best to have a facilitator in case that it can get a little chaotic. And it's also helpful for avoiding ambiguity. That's actually the last of my slide here. So these are some of the helpful sources that you can go back to for anything that we've talked about. A lot of them are on our website, but you can also find them on the legislaturevermont.gov websites. And if you have any further questions after our discussion, after this presentation, please feel free to email us.
Mhm.
All right.
Great.
Thanks, Gina. So yeah, open up the floor. Are there any more questions about any topics?
Yeah, I have one. Isn't though towns required to post like their not only annual budget, but their capital improvement budget?
Yeah, so the capital budget, when it's going up for consideration with the select board, they'll have to have a hearing, which could just take
Okay.
place during a normal select board meeting, and need to make it available ahead of time.
Okay, so it doesn't really have to be available for anyone outside the select board?
Not until it's ready for a hearing.
Okay, and it's updated every 5 years? Or is that just a recommendation?
Well, but if you create one in the state statutes, it needs to be for 5 years. We do recommend longer, of course, with Two Rivers for 10 years. And I should also say that the town is not required to create a capital budget, but it is, I
Okay.
think, in their best interest to do so. I think it's very helpful.
Excellent, good to hear.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Hi, Kevin.
Hey, good job, guys. Just to remember to ask folks for their feedback and stuff before people zip off.
In a chat.
Yeah.
Kevin's gonna at the end. Kevin's gonna have us ask if you feel like you've learned more than you knew before, and we'll have you raise your hand and record that. Before we get to that, though, yeah, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna, sorry, I like to ask questions, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we've talked about, sort of updating our plan. In the next, couple of years, we're gonna work on it. It sounds like, not the one that's in the plans going forward. We're not changing that. Don't worry. But this one will be like, we want to like make it, we want to have someone read it in the town and go, yes, like this is, we hear voices here, we hear what they want, and we want the town to move forward instead of this document that just sits there and is like, you know, we put together this dream, but this dream is never implemented kind of thing. And so like a lot of things that we can accomplish is like a check and balance kind of situation where, you know, our plans are give concrete evidence to what we're trying to do or what we have been doing or what could be done. And so you know, how can we make the town more accountable as well to that process? What I mean is like, I'm talking about even the select board and, you know, the town manager. How do we, and like even the zoning, and then the other boards, how do we, I know we can't force them, but how have you seen some collaboration that gets buy-in with this town plan enough where we have accountability? I mean, have you seen examples of that or had that happen in other towns?
If I may, Sam, I think it's up to us to approach the select board and raise the questions that come up from this kind of a meeting, like with the capital budgeting, and, you know, look to the neighbor like Stockbridge. I mean, one of the reasons Stockbridge's roads are as
Oh God, you can eat all of them.
as well, no, but I mean, I think that's a good example. If you look at their capital budget, they've clearly spelled out what they're going to do. They have the equipment they need, and they do a really good job of maintaining their roads. You haven't been in Bethel for decades,
No.
but you've seen how bad they can be when they're not as, and part of that's, you know, resources that are available, but part of it's planning. And I think we need to step up as a commission and say, hey, we want to be part of that process. We want you to have a process, and we're here to help.
No, I'd like to see us like do that as well for like the arts and, you know, and also the economic side too, you know, I mean, we want to bring in business here and we already have some great business that's been here for a long time. And it's very difficult to get new businesses in here. So like, that's where I see us trying to work with the community as well as our regional planning, but we need the town on board as well, right? And so, you know, on either regional planning side, you know, have you become like moderators to situations like that?
Yeah. I have a question that's follow on to that, and it's really for the TRORC folks, and that is, and this is near and dear to Dana's heart also, and that is methods of getting really quantifiable and subjective, I suppose, information from the citizens, from the residents, surveys, gatherings, town meeting, I mean, you know, not town meetings, small T town meetings. What have you seen in your 11 towns that is impressed you as an effective method of doing that? Kevin, you might have some insights on that.
Yeah, I would say surveys have been the best method probably. And some towns will go for a municipal planning grant just to do a survey. So if, you know, because to do a survey well and get everybody, it takes some money to do that. We're working with Corinth and they got 234 responses, and they're a smaller town than Bethel. So that's pretty good to be. And they crafted their survey pretty tightly, you know, it's just basically one page. We do have a survey guide, and we can help towns kind of develop the survey so you get useful information out of them. The other best thing that I have seen is really like an open house. And we did that in West Fairleigh at the school on a Saturday and had daycare. And it was more around kind of what is this thing of the town plan? Because, you know, when you tell people, hey, come to the town plan meeting, that's not a thing they understand. You know, they understand what that is. And so we did that, and it was very much a kind of, we went through the pieces of a town plan, but we didn't talk about the town plan. We just said, okay, what are people's ideas on housing? You know, what are people's ideas on energy? What are people's ideas on transportation? Using the format of the town plan as just as a framework to talk about things. And that was really good. We had boy, 40 or 50 people on a Saturday, but it was, you know, you're going to not get many people at a night meeting just because people are tired.
Yeah. Well, good, thanks. Somebody mentioned that, was it Heartland? I think it was Heartland. Somebody mentioned that they had put together a nice, I think that's right. I just wondered if, do you deal with Heartland at all? Well, you're next door. And someone's, so offline, I'd like to get some, maybe we'll make a contact and just let, you know, do that offline, but.
One of the things we brought up in one of our meetings is social media. Where Eric, I think we talked about it, and Dana too, is, you know, our town uses, you know, Facebook and Front Porch, and really doesn't update their website that much. And I feel like, you know, I know a few people that have removed, like, deleted their Facebook account altogether and doesn't use that. And, you know, I just recently downloaded Front Porch because I didn't know that they were on Front Porch. And then there's other people that just don't want to use the internet to get information to some extent. Like, how have you approached, or have you seen towns do different types of social media to notify people? Or just regular mail? I don't know.
Gina, you want to talk about, Gina actually does our social media, so.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I am in charge of doing social media. But so your question is how to effectively like communicate to people that there is a meeting happening, or
Yeah,
um
or anything, a survey
getting
out
feedback.
there, you know, because again, we're dealing with all different walks of life, you know, and ages here. And so, you know, it's not like, you know, being in the city where, you know, you get this large group of certain people being, you know, very savvy and just kind of you got to know what's going on there kind of thing, you know. It's more people are like, you know, I turn on my local news, you know, and find out what's going on, and that's about it.
yeah, no, I hear you about this. I think that I'm also having a hard time reaching people. Even through social media, like what you think is Instagram is very like approachable to everyone, but it really is not. And so I don't know, it's sometimes people can be very hard to reach. But but if they want to be reached, then they will make themselves be reachable. Um, so but
That's
it's definitely a good question. I'm still figuring it out.
good. Okay, that's good.
I think, you know, even, I don't want to get off in the weeds on this, but there are there are some towns that have done a very good job of making websites that are very accessible, you know. Now, again, that's going to eliminate, you know, 20%, 20% of people are not going to use that. But like Fairleigh, I looked at Fairleigh's website, and they're a good model. And I don't know how much money they spent on it, but you know, I think that's one thing that we really do need to look at in our neck of the woods.
I can give you guys an example too. It's not from our region, but one of the things I'm working on here is a bike ped master plan for Hartford and Randolph. And we're sort of potentially modeling what outreach we're going to do for that based on a plan that came out of Middlebury last year. And so for their outreach for this, they had QR codes and they posted those in town buildings, and it linked directly to the survey. So if you walked by, you saw it, you didn't have to fill it out at the time, but you could save the image, you could go to the website on your phone. And they also did tabling at the farmers market there.
Oh,
So they would table every weekend or whenever it occurred.
mhm.
And they did things like that. And they also held a couple of listening sessions. They're not, they really are hearings in the sense of where they were just there to hear from people about
Mm.
their experiences.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we'll make a podcast and just sound ridiculous.
I'd listen to it.
Us just complaining.
Yeah, podcast of our meetings would be fascinating, wouldn't
No, yeah. They're like, hold on, I gotta make notes. It's being recorded.
it? Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, I could also.
One final one. Is the slide deck that you used, is that available?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I will
I figured
send it
it
out
was.
to everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Mm, so what is it? So if we don't have any more questions, you have our emails. It's also on Two Rivers website, and so I think we can also call it a night.
We gotta vote. We gotta vote.
Yeah, we gotta vote.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true. Okay.
Right.
Thumbs up for the night's ending.
Yeah, we can, that's okay, but what about, you want reaction to the information or on a scale?
Oh,
of-
right.
Yeah.
Or even by thumbs up or thumbs
Yeah.
midway or
Yeah, virtual thumbs or real thumbs.
okay.
That's
Thumbs
great.
up, sure.
Very
Sweet.
helpful.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Yeah,
It was good. And yeah, and I think just the discussions are great too, but the material is complete for sure.
And
Definitely
I've
gonna
been-
love you.
And I was telling Brian before everybody else came on that I've been in the planning process one way or another for over 40 years, and I still learned some good stuff tonight. So thank you.
Oh, thank
great.
you.
That's great.
Well, thank you everyone for being so receptive and for showing up. This actually means a lot to me. So all
Thank
right.
you.
All right, well done. Good night.
Thank you.
Well,
All
Good
right,
night.
thank you,
night.
everyone. Good night.
Night.
Bye.